Hi there, I'm Michael Kane and welcome to another episode of Bodhi Talk, a channel dedicated to helping you open to life more fully. In today's video, we'll be talking about and exploring the window of tolerance and the amazing benefits for us when we're able to expand our window of tolerance, our capacity for life. So we'll be looking at what is the window of tolerance, the benefits, and the practice of building a larger window of tolerance, and when we find ourselves outside the window of tolerance, whether it be kind of out here, up here on the top, where we have anxiety and hypervigilance, or we're down here in shutdown, depression, or freeze, how can we find ourselves back in that functional zone, right? That window of tolerance where we have more capacity. Okay, so before we get started, just a reminder that if you like this video, please click the like button below. If you have any questions or comments, which I hope you will, you can put those below as well. Please subscribe to the channel, especially if you'd like to get notifications for up-and-coming videos that we'll be putting out. Also, if you'd like to know more about me or the work that I do here at Natural Bodhi Wellness, you'll find a link to my webpage below as well. So let's talk about the window of tolerance. So we're going to kind of break this video up into parts. Again, it's such a great video and so helpful if we are able to utilize some of these tools and things that are in this video. So we're going to talk about the window of tolerance and what it is. We're going to talk about what it's like to be outside the window of tolerance. We're going to talk about what tools and things we can use to get back into the window of tolerance, or back into that functional zone where we have capacity for life and more freedom. And then we're going to talk about, really the main thing that I want to talk about in this video is how we can build a larger window of tolerance. More capacity equals more freedom, right? That's just the way it is. The less limited I am, the more openness I have, clarity, the more ability I have to move through life in a very functional, resilient way. So, and then we'll talk a little bit about the benefits of that and what that means for us. So, the first thing we want to talk about is what is the window of tolerance? Well, it's a term coined by Dr. Dan Siegel, who is a doctor of psychology and psychiatrics at UCLA. Lots of great books out there by Dr. Dan Siegel that you'll find quite helpful. But what is the window of tolerance? Well, it's this window of it's like a functional zone in a way, or a capacity. When we're in the window of tolerance, we have more flexibility, we're flexible, we feel more grounded, more present, we feel we have more emotional regulation, we're open, we're curious, we have more resilience, right? When things fall apart, when we have to move into a challenge, we're much more able to be with that without getting swept away by our emotions and falling apart. We're able to function, basically. So that's our window of tolerance. Window of tolerance or capacity, again, equals freedom. The larger the window, the more freedom that we have. Of course, it's relative to our lives. It's not good or bad to have, that we have a larger window or a smaller window. We can always build it. That's the great thing. We can lose a window of tolerance, but we can also build it. And so no matter where we are, that's where we want to begin. And then we can build from there. Let's see, some of the things that can create a smaller window of tolerance, or decide how much of a window of tolerance or how much capacity we have for life can be all kinds of things. The way we were raised, traumas, developmental trauma, shock trauma, events that have happened in our life, even events that have recently happened, even in adulthood, can determine how much window of tolerance we have, or losing or gaining. One of the things that we know is like after COVID, or during COVID, a lot of people that were very functional before COVID lost a lot of capacity, a lot of window of tolerance, because they stopped going to work, they weren't going to the grocery store, they're having their food delivered, they weren't socially engaging. So when we had to go back into the world, back to work and back into the world, some people, many people actually, had a hard time with that. Some people experienced anxiety and panic, and a lot of people had to, either knowingly, consciously or subconsciously, we were having to like rebuild our capacity for life, right? And certain things. So all kinds of things can create a larger or a smaller window. One of the things that can really create a smaller window or a smaller capacity for us is really the culture that we live in here in America. There are a lot of distractions, a lot of things that disconnect us. The culture, in a way, is kind of set up to say, okay, you don't have to deal with those challenges or problems. You can go on your phone, you can take this medication, you can have a drink, you can go on your cell phone, go on social media, all kinds of different ways that we can distract or disassociate from challenges and difficulties. And so it's not even our fault. That's the kind of the way we're raised a lot of times, and the culture kind of says, oh, this is what you need. And so either it's trying to push us or take us away from difficulties, whether they be internal or external, or it's, you can be happier if you do this. And so we want to be an advocate for our own mental and spiritual and emotional health. And so we want to look out for these things. Anytime that we're trying to get away and using something to get away, our window of tolerance is going to diminish a little bit. And the other thing is that we become dependent on those things that take us away from difficulty and challenges, or those things that create more happiness, that we need to use to create more happiness, right? Or more contentment in our life. And what we really want is a kind of natural capacity, not something that we need to depend on. We want to be able to feel like we are able to deal with the challenges and not be so limited. So that's the window of tolerance. So there are different ways, again, that we can move in and out of the window of tolerance. We have either hyper arousal or hypo arousal, meaning that we can be outside the window. Well, let's just say that the window is kind of like a real window, right? There's this window of tolerance. On the top, we have anxiety, overwhelm, things like that. And then on the bottom, we have hypoarousal, which is freeze, depression, shutdown, things like that. So the first thing we'll talk about is what's it like to be outside the window of tolerance up here. And that's going to be, again, anxiety, overwhelm, chaotic thinking, dysregulation, an inability to manage emotions, so we get swept away by our emotions quite easily. And of course, we're in that fight-flight kind of hyper-vigilant experience. So that's what it's like to be up here in hyperarousal. To be in hypoarousal, again, it's a kind of shutdown, numbness, depression, freeze. And now, just to be fair, there are different kinds of freeze. We can have this very collapsed, kind of helplessness or freeze that we can have down here, but there's also a freeze up here in the sympathetic area. So there can be what we call a tonic immobility. So immobility meaning it's a kind of tension inside. We can't move, but it's got a lot of energy associated to it. So we can be in a freeze up here or a freeze down here. Either way, both of those are outside the window of tolerance. So how can we bring ourselves back into the window of tolerance, whether we're up here in hyperarousal or down here in hypoarousal? Well, if we're up here in, like I said, activation or overwhelm, there's some great tools to bring us down. So that's important, right? So if we're up here, we want to down-regulate, create less energy, settle, right? We want to create some settling. If we're down here in hypo arousal, we want to up-regulate. We want to create energy. So here we are. We're up here in overwhelm, hypervigilance, fight, flight. We're activated. And so some of the things that we want to be able to do some things that are quite simple to affect the reptilian brain, right? The nervous system. And so what I like to do, there's some very simple tools. I'm going to give you a bunch of different ones. But I like to start with orienting, grounding, and movement of joints, right? So, maybe you can play along with me here for a moment. Maybe you have a little bit of anxiety or a little bit of stress throughout your day today, a little bit of tension. Maybe you're feeling a little bit outside. Maybe you're just up near the top. But let's play a little bit with this. So the first thing I would do is I would do a little orienting. So maybe notice 5 things in the environment around you, right? 5 things that you can pause with and notice. Things that you like, right? Shapes, colors, things that you like in the environment around you. Good. Noticing that, allowing yourself. One of the things that is really important about whether you're in hyper or hypoarousal is that we want to begin by accepting where we are. The more we try to fight and get away from how we feel or where we are, the more tension, the more activation we're going to create in hyperarousal. So the first thing we really want to do is just accept where we are, whether it's feeling anxious or if we feel okay, that's fine as well. But just starting there, and then we're doing these tools or using these tools to create a better container so that the system will naturally settle back down. So we're noticing things, next thing, so 5 things that you can see, 3 things that you can hear. So letting your ears do a little orienting. So I can hear some traffic outside. I can hear the clock ticking. Right? I hear some other sounds. And then if you're able, one thing that you can touch could be your clothes, your skin, could be something next to you, just some texture that you can touch, and orienting with your hand or your hands. Yeah, and then notice, I mean, we're doing this fairly quickly, but maybe you notice in this little piece that we're doing here, maybe you notice a little bit more settling coming in, right? Right, that things are shifting down a little bit if you're in that more activated state. So some other ways that we can work with hyper arousal to create more, to get us back into the window, right? Back into that functional zone would be, let's see, noticing a sense of safety, joint movement. We started to talk about that one. So that's really just moving joints in the body, right, to open up the body and create a better container for energy. because we tend to, when we feel activated, we tend to get tight, right, when we feel stressed. So joint movement is a really important thing. Just a reminder that I'm going to put some links in the description for all kinds of different videos that I've done in the past that will be quite helpful in both working with hyper or hypo arousal and bringing ourselves back in the window. And also you'll find some links to videos that will help us when we get into this section of building a window, a larger window of tolerance. So look for those in the description below. So let's see, what else? A warm bath, weighted blanket, soft music, directing energy out. Sometimes if you can do that in a gentle way, like if you have a lot of anger, for instance, or healthy aggression or injustice feeling, and you feel that, being able to squeeze a pillow, all right, directing the energy out, or pushing against a wall a little bit, right? Those are ways that we can direct energy out, which actually will help create a little bit more settling. So those are all different ways to work with a more activated, hypervigilant, anxious, overwhelmed kind of state, like hyperarousal. Hypoarousal, right? So again, hyper, we want to downregulate. Hypo, we want to upregulate. So if we're in freeze or disconnected, depression, right, shut down, we want to be able to bring energy into the system. And again, we want to start where we are, not trying to push ourselves too hard, but really using what we call titration, being able to ease ourselves based on our capacity at the time, easing ourselves into a little bit more and more energy until we don't want to do too much, because we might overwhelm the system in some way and make ourselves shut down even more. So we want to just ease into creating energy and aliveness in the body. There are all kinds of ways to do that. You might have some ways that you like to use. Orienting, again, actually can create some energy. It brings us out of our kind of fog in a way. That can be quite helpful. Movement, again, even the movements we were talking about before, moving the hands and the arms and the legs and such. Exercise, any kind of exercise can be quite helpful. Things that have a bit more energy associated with them, like in yoga, like a vinyasa type yoga. Let's see, a brisk walk around the block, that can be quite helpful. Meditation, meditations that bring energy into the system, dancing, balancing. Social engagement, really important to get on the phone if you have to, or get out and talk to people. That will bring aliveness and energy into the system. And again, I know that all of these things I make them sound simple and easy, but they may be simple, but they're not easy, and I recognize that. But again, one of my teachers used to say the antidote to depression is willpower. So we have to create some energy to begin to create energy in a way. And so let's see, upbeat music, breath. We didn't talk about breath before. So we know that in-breath is going to create, is more sympathetic, so it's going to create more energy and aliveness. And out-breath is parasympathetic, so it's going to settle. So we could use a long out-breath when we're trying to down-regulate, and a long in-breath to create energy. So if you find yourself in that place right now, again, we could just do a real quick little piece here. And here's the thing, is that for some people that I work with, they're in bed. They can't even get out of bed. And that's when they have a very small window of tolerance. And because of, again, it's relative. Different things have happened to people, and their window of tolerance has gotten smaller, their capacity. And we we have to build it back up. So it may be that somebody that's just in bed, we're just starting with just moving the hands, right? And then doing that a few times. You might do that with me, right? Like squeeze and open and squeeze and open. And then just notice that there's some sensation there. There's energy that gets created in your hands. You might notice that, right? And that may be where we start. And if that feels okay, if we're able to do that, then maybe we can start to move the arms a little bit, right? We're titrating ourselves into energy. You know, maybe we can move the shoulders a little bit, right? You might move your shoulders and your arms, right? Move your neck, right? Move your jaw. Any of these things are going to start to create energy and aliveness, right? Move your legs. And then at some point you're like, oh, wow, I can get up out of the chair. I can get up out of bed. And now I can start to walk around, right? I can start to walk around the room. And then maybe I can start to walk around the yard. And then I can walk around the neighborhood. And so we're building energy and all these different things. You have your own ways that you can do that. Walk on the beach. Whatever it takes to create energy, that's going to bring us out of those hypo states and back into that functional zone again. And you know, one of the things that I didn't mention before on both sides, whether it's hypo or hyper, is, you know, sometimes we need help. We need some therapy. We need some healing work. Somebody that can help us. Massage can help on both ends, hyper, hypo, to create energy or to settle us. So sometimes we need support. We need help from others to help us get moving and to get us back into that functional zone again. So hope that's helpful on, you know, explaining hyper and hypo and how to get back into that functional zone. Now, really important is to actually build more capacity when we, you know, it's really important to remember that we're not going to do this building capacity when we are in hypervigilance, right? When we're activated, super activated, overwhelmed. We're going to wait until we settle a little bit before we want to do that. But it's super important and super beneficial to be able to build more capacity, a larger window. You know, it's like capacity credit for the future. You know, capacity equals freedom. That's really, really important. So how can we build a larger window of tolerance? So the best way I like to describe this is what I call, it's a term that I learned from yoga, which is that we are stretching into the edge of discomfort, right? We're not pushing our way through. You're not forcing anything. We're just gently titrating or stretching into the edge of discomfort, right? Not pain, right? But discomfort. Internal challenges, external challenges, our boss, our kids, a traffic jam, all kinds of things. You know, it could start with the smallest little sound outside. Sometimes I work with that with people. I just, you know, some sound bothers them. And can we open to that? Again, that's the most important thing of really learning to befriend the things that we can't be with. That starts to create that capacity. So, so some of the things that we can do to build a larger window of tolerance, some of the same things that we talked about before with the other two things that we were talking about, hyper, hypo, exercise, getting good sleep, a good diet, social engagement. Let's see. Again, therapy or doing healing work can get, you know, sometimes we need some help. We need people to help us to build capacity, to help us push through or get through, not push through, right? Stretch into the edge of discomfort. And that in turn, for every action, there's a reaction, right? We build capacity and we have more freedom in our lives. We know that that the more that we walk away or push away from the difficulties, internal, external, the smaller the window is going to get, the less capacity we have, and the more dysregulated we're going to get. So we want to be trying every day, at least the tiniest bit, to stretch into the edge of discomfort. And for each of us, that's going to be different. That's relative, right? For some of you, it's like a sound, or the dog barking, or some internal itch, or something like that, that I can learn to be with. It's very much like, an analogy for this would be like lifting weights, right? So I go to the gym, my maximum, the capacity that I want to get to is 100 pounds. I want to lift 100 pounds. But I don't start with 100 pounds. I start with 10 pounds. And I do that for a week, and then I at first it's like, oh, that's really hard. And then after a week, it's like, wow, that's not difficult at all. And what do? I put on 10 more pounds. But guess what just happened? I just doubled my capacity, right? So my window of tolerance got larger. And so you can think about that in life. What are things that I can just stretch into a little bit that are difficult for me, but I could maybe stretch in a little bit at a time, like getting into the water, right? I stick my toe in the water and then I back away, and then I stick my foot in the water, and eventually I'm able to get in the water. Again, it does take some willpower. It takes patience, right? And there will be things that, we can't be with. And, in those situations, I say, can you be with not being able to be with that? That's a beginning. So we want to start where we are. We don't want to push ourselves too much. As I said earlier, you'll find some links to some of my other videos. One of the things that we can use for capacity building or larger window of tolerance would be pendulation. And what does that mean? It means that there's something that's difficult. Maybe I have an ache in my body, or an emotion that's difficult, or something that's difficult, internal, external. And then there's something that's more of a resource. So say I have some tightness in my chest, for instance, but my legs and my feet feel really open and at ease. So I move my awareness back and forth to help me be with something that's difficult. I hang out with something that feels okay. And by doing that movement back and forth, I start to open up. So just for fun here, just for a minute or two, just to try this out for a moment. So, landing, well, let's do this. Let's talk about one of the other things that I forgot to mention that's a very good capacity building practice, and that's mindfulness, which you'll also find a link to that. Mindfulness is a capacity building practice, right? So what is mindfulness? I come back to the present moment, right? I use my breath a lot of times to anchor me in the present moment. And then I'm being here in the present moment. But can I be here with a non-judgmental awareness? Can I be here accepting things in this particular moment, right? Whether it's a sound of the weed eater, or the dog, or the clock. And can I just allow things, especially the things that are a little bit difficult, right? Stretching into the edge of discomfort. That's mindfulness. So maybe just taking a few moments here, or a minute, to just land here in the present moment. You might do a little orienting again, just kind of noticing your environment. Here we are. Deep breath comes in, right? We're landing, right? We're coming into our nice window here. And here we are with joys and sorrows, beauty and amazement, challenges, all of it, all here. And can we just be here with it? Just see what that's like, just to hang out here and not need things to be different, right? Not need things to be different, especially the things that we can't change, right? Whether it's an itch on my nose, or some sound, or whatever. So let's just hang out with this. And again, we're not doing, this is really important for any of the things that we've been talking about today. None of the tools that we're talking about, none of the things that we're doing are to get away from experience. They're all based on creating a better container, right? So we're just doing these things as, we're accepting the way things are just to create a better container so that I'm not fighting against things. That not fighting is going to create more ease, is going to create a larger window, right? More acceptance. Okay, and let's talk about some of the benefits of building a larger window of tolerance, having more capacity. So, of course, we'll feel less limited, we'll experience more motivation, less fear, much more clear thinking, more resilience, again, more flexibility, more grounded, able to move into things that were before quite challenging. We're able to be with people in a different way. One of the big pieces is, I think, is less chronic illness. We know that something like 85% of chronic illness is at least somewhat affected by stress. And of course, we know that a lot of stress is, in fact, how I'm relating to life, right? Wanting things to be different that I can't change. That's what creates a lot of our stress. And so if I have less stress, there's going to be less bracing, all kinds of things, less fighting against life. And so the more capacity I have, the larger my window of tolerance, the more I can accept and allow, right? And have more being able to adapt, feeling more grounded, more flexible, more open, more curious, all of those things, more present. The more that I have these things, the less stress I'm going to have, and so less chronic illness, going to live longer, going to be happier in my life. So very important. So I hope this video has been helpful for you. I hope that you will take some of these things and work with them. I hope that you'll stretch into the edge of discomfort. I really can tell you for a fact that the more you do this, the easier life becomes, and you'll have a lot more fun, less limitations in your life. So I hope that you will do some of these things and build your window of tolerance. So look forward to seeing you again. Stay safe. Thank you.